Hey everybody, we are back. We are on chapter 2. Remember, we're working on a book, Thoughts Are Things by Prentice Mulford. Chapter 2 is called Who Are Your Relations? And this is an excellent chapter. And Prentice goes super deep with this. But it starts off a little bit rough. When I first kind of read through this, I was kind of like, where is Prentice going with this? I wasn't so much confused, but I was kind of waiting to kind of see where is he going with this. And he goes super deep with this. So other than that, stay in the game here. Stay in the game and really listen to this, because all these chapters will sooner or later change your life. I mean, the more you hear this over and over, the more you finally get it. Because what we're trying to do here, remember, you manifest from within out. Okay, you manifest from your deep-rooted beliefs, your deep-rooted thoughts, what you deep-rooted believe, and it's not even your beliefs that's really governing your life. It's really your beliefs of your parents, beliefs of your grandparents, beliefs of the teachers that influenced you way back in your early years. I mean, way back in your early years. I'm meaning when you're 4, 5, 6 years old. These are where your beliefs are coming from. So, stay in the game, listen to this, and let's get rocking and rolling. Chapter 2, Who Are Your Relations? The man or woman who if most like you in taste, motives, and habits of thought, and to whom you feel most attracted, may not be brother, sister, cousin, or any physical relative at all, but such person is to you a very near relation. And right here, right out of the box, really what he's talking about here, let me change the color, is that when he says the man or woman who is most like you in taste, motives, and habits, meaning what he's going with this is that you're going to hang around people that are just like you. We've all heard the saying, this is 2024, this book was published in 1908, and this was published after Prentice Mulford passed away, and he passed away in 1891. So these are all his manuscripts and essays from the mid 1800s. And even in the mid 1800s, I mean, they knew your environment, who you hang around, who you are from the inside out. That's who you're going to congregate around. I mean, people around you, people who are your friends, best friends, maybe relatives or not, that you hang around most of the time, are pretty much just like you, or at least they're within that 10% of you. They're not too far off from you. They're really close and similar to you. That's why we always hear the saying that you are like your 5 best friends you hang around. The 5 top people you hang around, you're number 6. Now, that could be a good thing or a bad thing. If you hang around all your friends are millionaires and very successful, well, guess what? You're going to be number 6. But the reverse happens as well, because it's universal law. There's always a reverse to universal law. If your top 5 friends, the top 5 people you hang around are in poverty, they're going nowhere, maybe they're on drugs and alcohol, well, again, you're going to be number 6, because you become who you hang around. You eventually become what your environment will persuade you to do. So that's really what he's talking about here in this chapter, but he really goes super crazy deep with this, and it's actually really good. Your brothers or sisters may not be like you at all in mind, taste, and inclination. You may associate with them because they are members of the family, but were you not to know them as brothers, sisters, or other relatives, or were you to see elsewhere their exact counterparts in character, you might not like such counterparts at all. Meaning, what he's saying about this, he's wording it kind of weird, but basically your family, your brothers, your sisters, your aunts and uncles, your nieces and nephews, that they might not be like you at all. Like, even on an outside world, if you didn't really know them as family, you might not even hang around them. You might not be like magnetized to them because you're so different. That's kind of where he's kind of outlining this chapter. You got to hang on here. Physical or blood relationship has very little bearing on the real or mental relationship. It is possible for a brother or sister, a father or mother, to be very closely allied to you in thought and sympathy. Again, it is possible for a father or mother, brother or sister, to be very remote from you in thought and sympathy, and to live in a realm or atmosphere of thought very unlike yours. And this this kind of even brings up, and this is where he's going to kind of go on with this and dive deeper and deeper. Is that I think we all experience this. Like sometimes we might feel closer to our mom than our dad. Sometimes we might feel closer to our dad than our mom. I mean, sometimes we might feel closer to our a sister or a brother or maybe an aunt or an uncle, just because they resonate with us like in our same thought process. Because we will kind of subconsciously, we don't do this consciously, okay, we do this subconsciously, because that's who is attracting. It's just like manifesting. We manifest from within out. Things come to us and are kind of as a magnet to us as what our deep rooted beliefs are. But the same thing as people are attracted to us, that the same thoughts that we have, but it's really our secret thoughts and deep rooted beliefs. That's what kind of makes people, that's kind of what makes us feel like, we have a better bond with a certain person. Right now he kind of staying with a family dynamic, but that's what he's really talking about here. You can live neither healthfully nor comfortably unless with those whose thought atmosphere, a literal emanation from them, is similar to your own. So what he's saying here, you can't have a healthy relationship, okay, without the person you're hanging around has to be similar to your own. Okay, that's what he's saying. Physical relationship may or may not furnish such an atmosphere. Compel a laboring man whose thought goes little beyond his eating, drinking, and daily round of work to live exclusively with a company of artists and philosophers, seeing none of his own kind and order of thought, and that man's spirits would in time be depressed, and his health would suffer. The same law works when the superior mind is compelled to constant association with the inferior. Such may be your position among physical relatives. So I love what I highlighted in the purple here. The same law works when the superior mind is compelled to constant association with the inferior, meaning that when you don't have that bond with somebody, okay, it's you're not bonding with them the same level of thought you have. So that's what he's saying. You're kind of going to be depressed. You're not going to have a healthy relationship, especially if you're around them all the time. And he's using this example where your superior mind, your subconscious mind, okay, if you're constantly hanging around somebody inferior, you're constantly hanging around somebody in, let's say, in poverty, someone way off from you, well, you're kind of going to be depressed in that environment. Okay, you're not going to get great success out of that environment for you. Okay, so that's why he's saying, like, almost like attracts like, but a like attracts like is even as people that we're kind of manifesting in our lives, or people that we're drawing to us, they're just like us. So that's why people will say, even today in 2024, and that's why I always say today in 2024, because this book was published 150 years ago. Or the manuscripts, the essays are coming from 150 years ago. So we're drawing to us people just like us, okay? And that could be a good thing or a bad thing. Children live, thrive, and are exaggerated by the thought atmosphere emanating from their playmates. Isn't that weird? Now he's going back to childhood. Let me read that again. Children live, thrive, and are exhilarated by the thought atmosphere emanating from their playmates. Why, if they love being around their playmates are just like them, and in the same thought, and they like the same thing, they're going to thrive in that environment. That's what he's saying here in the very first sentence. Then he goes on and says, cut them entirely off from their association, and they droop. Okay, if you cut your children off from their association, from that really great environment they're in, then they're droop. It becomes a negative. As a child who lived upon this atmosphere of childhood, that is, you lived in a spiritual relationship of childhood, and regarding a certain playful thought, nutriment, received it and also gave it to your playmates. You may wonder now why you cannot arouse the old feeling and exhilaration coming either from your associations of childhood or youth. It is because your spirit requires another thought food or atmosphere, which only another and probably higher order of mind can give. that received, and time would pass as quickly and pleasantly as it did with the associates of your earlier physical existence. Those who can furnish it are your real relations. But such relationship cannot exist unless you can furnish them with the same quality of thought in return. The real or spiritual relations of many merchants, mechanics, and those of other callings are their brother merchants, mechanics, and those of similar occupations. They prove this by their lives. They feel more at home with those whose business is like their own than they do to the places they may call home, in which they resort to eat, sleep, and spend often a tiresome Sunday, longing for Monday's coming. And this is a really crazy long sentence. I mean, this is old school again. It's like today it would be like a run-on sentence. Like, when is this sentence going to stop? But I love what he's saying here. Let me read the beginning of this really quick. Okay, people feel more at home with those whose business is like their own. Isn't that so true? Okay, when we're thinking about people we hang around, we feel more at ease, we feel more comfortable around people that's just like us. Okay, look at it this way. If you go to a giant party and maybe it's a family get together, maybe a friend invited you, so you don't know everybody. Okay, and isn't it so weird that people will congregate in groups according to kind of how they feel, where they feel comfortable. That's kind of what we do. We go where we feel comfortable. We hang around with people we feel comfortable. And when we hang around with someone we feel comfortable, usually they're just like us, or within a 10% of us. They're not so far out. I mean, for example, if you make $50,000 a year, I can almost bet your top 5 friends you hang around is a very similar, earn the same amount of money as you do, or very similar to it. They might not earn exactly 50,000, maybe they earn 60,000, but they're so close to you. Okay, now let's say if I come in your group and I hang around you and I earn $500,000 a year and you knew it, just because of that wage difference or the career difference, you might feel uncomfortable around me. Okay, because I'm not just like you. I'm not just like your group of people, your group of friends that you hang around. That's where he's going with this. Every order of mind or quality of thought must have association with corresponding order of mind and quality of thought, or it will suffer. But blood relationship has little to do with furnishing such order of thought. Okay, now he's really doing a distinction here. He's really kind of hammering down on family, your parents, your brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews and aunts and uncles. And listen to us very closely. Every order of mind and quality of thought must have association with corresponding order of mind and quality of thought. Okay, this means like attracts like. The people you hang around is just like you. Okay, now again, this is what I said in the beginning. This could be a good thing or a bad thing. There is a vast amount of unconscious tyranny exercised through the ties of physical relationship. Children often, when grow up, place the mothers or fathers in their minds in a sphere and method of life when they may or may not care to belong. Then thought, seldom if ever expressed, runs in substance thus: mother is getting too old to wear bright colors. She must dress more subdued. It is ridiculous for mother, if a widow, to marry again. Very hard cash reason sometimes entering into the sediment. Mother, of course, does not want to enter into our gayer life, so she can stay at home and take care of the children. Or it is time for father retired from business. Or father's idea of marrying again is ridiculous. And I'm not going to expand too much on this. Now, these are a lot of examples he kind of gave right here. And a lot of these thoughts that we think unconsciously, especially as children, we think more we're a teenager, older adolescent at this point, or we could be, or our parents could be older, where we're kind of thinking these thoughts about our parents. But this is more unconscious thoughts that we're having. And I know Prentice dives deep into this, so I'm not going to say so much about this. So let's kind of move on here. No force is more subtle in its workings, no more powerful and bring results for good or ill than the steady output of thought from one or several minds, combined on one person to effect one desired result. And whether this is done intelligently or consciously or blindly, the force works the same result. Now, a continual flow of this kind of thought coming from possibly 3 or 4 minds to whom mother was instrumental in furnishing new bodies. The continually directed on mother is a very powerful force to direct and keep her exactly where the children find it most convenient to have her. The whole conventional current of thought also flows as an aid in this direction. Mother, says this unspoken sentiment, most of course grow old, retire gradually from a more active and gayer life, and retire also to a corner of the household to associate with other shelved and declining parents. And he useful as a general upper nurse in times of sickness or other family emergency. Through the action on these minds, many mothers cease to have any privileges as individuals and eventually do exactly as their children desire. And this is so true. I kind of know where this chapter is going just because, I've read it, but kind of this is where it starts to kind of get really deep here. So stay with me here. I don't want to say too much here. Possibly it is here remarked or thought, but should I not go to my mother and other near relative with my cares and trials and receive her help, as I have always been in the habit of doing? Ought not those of my own family, above all others, to help me in time of need? So he's really kind of starting to dissect, especially aging parents, especially as we get older. We have such weird beliefs as when people get older, they're not part of the society, or when people get older, they don't know, or when people get older, they should just retire, hang around retired people. If people get older, it's kind of too late for them type of thing. He's kind of going on that thought. And sometimes children can think this way of their parents. You should just retire, hang around retired people. I don't need to ask you for advice because you don't know, you're too old, you're too out of touch. You should just retire. Or maybe they want to do something, or maybe your parents want to do something, maybe go back to school, go back to college, and you hear them say, oh, I'm too old to do that. This is where he's kind of going with this. Certainly, if the mother or any of your physical relatives are glad and anxious so to do, certainly if such service from a relative comes directly from the heart and is not compelled by the sentiment taken sometimes this form of unspoken expression. I suppose I must do this because it is my brother or my son or my physical relative who asks it. Ask it. Many are these services which are unconsciously demanded rather than asked. In these cases, loads are piled upon relatives simply because they are relatives. Favors in the money, in the endorsement of notes, are in a sense exacted through the sympathy of relatives. Support, food, shelter, maintenance are expected from relatives when it cannot be procured elsewhere. Hospitality is expected from relatives when to expect hospitality is to make such entertainment the result of a demand. Presents are expected from relatives when to expect a gift makes it rather an extortion. Real gifts are always surprises. No one expects a surprise, since expectation destroys the surprise. Relatives visit and camp down on other relatives simply because they are relatives, and a vast amount of grudging, grumbling, but unspoken thought is always going out when relatives use each other's houses to save hotel bills. No real or lasting good comes from any gifted bestowed on another unless the heart goes with it. This is excellent right here. Listen to this very closely. No real or lasting good comes from any gift. Okay, he's talking about gift, like giving, is bestowed on another unless the heart goes with it. So what he's talking about here, and he's going to talk about, is that when you give, your heart should be in it. Your emotion should be in it. You should want to give. It shouldn't be forced. Okay, when you're thinking like, oh, I have to give, I have to do this, you're forcing it. So when you're being kind of forced to do something, you're working in disharmony with the laws of the universe. Okay, and this is what he's going to explain here. No real or lasting good comes from any gift bestowed by another unless the heart goes with it, and its bestowed is to the giver in an act of unallowed pleasure. I mean, it should give you joy to give. That's what he's saying. You should want to do it and joy to give. Then he continues, because something else goes with the material gift, the food and the shelter, the loan, which Though not seen, the little known is more important than the form itself. That is the thought which goes with it. So it's your thought behind giving. It's what you're thinking behind your giving. This is what I'm saying. If your heart's not into it, you shouldn't give. So that's why he says that is a thought which goes with it. That's the thought which goes with you giving that gift. That thought strongly affects, for good or ill, the person who receives the gift. Listen, it doesn't just affect you, it affects the other person, because we're all feeding in the same consciousness. Okay, it's the same way when we talk about forgiveness. Forgiveness is for both, but in forgiveness is for you because it breaks that bond. It breaks the bond. You guys are interconnected because you can't forgive that person. So you're dragging both of you down. So when you truly forgive and forget, you break that cord that separates you both. So it's the same way here when he says that thought strongly affects, for good and ill, the person who receives the gift. So you both, it affects you and the other person if your heart's not in the right place. If you really don't want to do it, you actually affect the other person as well. If, as giving within your means, you bestow the merely trifle in money upon a person in need, and the thought that goes with it is not only the most sincere desire to help that person, but you feel a keen sense of pleasure in giving such help, then you throw upon that person a certain thought element which will never leave them, and it benefit them eternally and in proportion to the quality, power, and the force of thought. Isn't that so true? Like when you're giving for the right reasons and you really want to give, it's not just for you. The blessings isn't just coming from you, but you're actually blessing the other person. But you're not blessing the other person just in that gift, whatever that gift was, but you're blessing that other person from your thought transmission. Okay, now even if you're into Neville Goddard, Neville Goddard uses a lot of examples like this where we can go into our imagination, and he always uses this example in all his lectures. He always uses, like, if your friend is unemployed, your friend doesn't have a job, maybe your friend got laid off or fired, but he's unemployed. Okay, don't look at your friend as unemployed. Go inside your imagination and see your friend employed. See your friend having a wonderful job. See your friend making 50% more money that he did at his last job. See your friend being happy and secure inside your imagination. But that's thought transmission. That's what he's kind of explaining here. But he's not, of course, since it's Old English, it's in the mid 1800s. That's what he's really meaning. We have the power to do that. But he's using the example of a gift. If our heart's not in the right place, if we really don't want to give, we're going to affect us and we're going to affect the giver that we're giving the gift to. Okay, I'm right down here just in case you're following along. Then you do far more than relieve their present physical necessity. You give them a certain amount of spiritual power. Listen to this. You give them a certain amount of spiritual power. You wish that their power may be so developed and increased as to enable them to live above beggary and draw to themselves the goods of this earth, as all will and must when grown to certain stature in spiritual power. Is a great help for them in time to acquire such power. You have sent and sown in them a seed of thought which will take root and bear fruit at some period of their real or spiritual existence. Isn't that so powerful? And I love the last sentence here. Okay, when you're giving for the right reasons, you really want to give. Your heart's in the right place. You really want to do it. Right? And he says, you have sent and sown. Okay, when you reap what you sow, that's the law he's using here. Sent and sown, he's saying it differently, but you reap what you sow. You have sent and sown in them a seed of thought, because that's what you're thinking. You have thoughts of success, thoughts of abundance. So that's thoughts transmission. You're giving thoughts of abundance to them. This is how this works. You have sent and sown to them a seed of thought, which will take root and bear fruit at some period of their real or spiritual existence. So it will come to them. We don't know when, but it will come to them. Abundance will come to them. But the reverse happens. Remember, laws of the universe. This is a law. Okay, it's a flip-flop. This is where he gives a flip-flop in green here. But if you give grudgingly, if you don't want to give, you give out of force, you don't want to do it. Okay, maybe it's expected for you to do it. So internally, you're telling yourself, "Oh, I don't want to do this." You're kind of internally forcing yourself, but on the outside, you're trying to look happy. But if you give grudgingly, if you give under any sort of compulsion, if you give food, shelter, clothing, money, anything, doesn't matter what it is, other because circumstances compel you to do, or because people might talk unfavorably of you for not giving. Remember, people, maybe you went to a party or wherever you are, so people know what you're doing, so you're kind of doing it because you're trying to win favor with other people rather than doing it for the right reason. Or he says, because other people are so giving, then your gift does relatively little good, no matter of whom bestowed, be it even mother, father, brother, sister, son, or daughter. You relieve then only a physical necessity, and that only for a time. You may possibly feed a body, shelter it, clothe it, but you do not and cannot feed properly the spirit that uses that body if the thought going with your gift is not that of your most perfect willingness and hearty pleasure in relieving that body's necessities. Listen, this is so powerful. And then we've explained this over and over and over again, and I've said this so many times, but I keep on repeating it because it's so powerful, because we really miss this. It's easy to get caught up in doing what we're doing in our daily lives, and lots of times we fall into this trap. Lots of times we fall into a trap of, we give because we want to give. Our heart's in the right place, we want to do it. Then other times we're just giving out of because we have to do it. Okay, maybe we go to a birthday party, we hardly know the person, and it's just, proper or expected to actually bring a gift, but I don't really want to bring a gift. Why do I need to bring a gift? Because I don't know the person. So, in that realm, I might be thinking that. I could be speaking out loud to my significant other or whatever, and in those circumstances, I'm kind of forcing the gift. So my thought process isn't in the right place. So that's what he's talking about here. When your thought process isn't in the right place, you're not blessing them by thought. So your gift, your physical gift, really has no value to it, because your heart, your physical gift, your thought, your abundance of thought has to go with it. I'll read it one more time in purple here. You relieve then only a physical necessity, and that only for a time. You may possibly feed a body, shelter it, clothe it, but you do not and cannot feed properly the spirit that uses that body if the thought going with your gift is not that of the most perfect willingness and hearty pleasure in relieving the body's necessities. The grudgingly thought accompanying the gift, remember, the grudgingly thought accompanying a gift, you don't want to give the gift, that grudgingly thought that you're forced to give it, the thought common to that position when the recipient of the gift, no matter how near the relationship, no matter how close they are to you, it doesn't matter, is endured rather than enjoyed. The thought accompanying any gift to any person or relative that is given principally because custom and public opinion require it, or because of the recipient's importunity, is a great damage both to the giver and the taker. Isn't this astounding? Okay, if you're just giving because you think you've got to give it, you ought to give it, it's demanded to give it, it's expected to give it, you really don't want to. That's where you're kind of grumbling to yourself because you don't want to do it, but you do it anyway. Isn't it weird when Prentice Mulford says, it's a great damage to both the giver and the taker, not just one of you. You're damaging both of you. You're not blessing both of you. Okay, you're living in disharmony from the law here. It is the sending to the one who receives a current of thought, evil in its character and result. It brings back to the giver from the one who takes a response and thought of like nature. And this is also is harmful, because if you receive a gift which you have in any way extorted your feeling for the giver, is not that of warm, glowing gratitude, but something quite different. The Christ of Judea, when commending the widow who cast her mite into the treasury, did so in her estimation and seen in this light, not merely because she gave in proportion to her material means, but because he saw that her thought of desire to help in whatever way help was needed, going with that mite, was far more heartful and genuine than that of a richer person who cast in larger sums. but cast in also with them a lower character of thought and motive. He saw also that the woman's thought was actually doing far more to help than that of others, for it was purer, less mixed with lower motive, and therefore very far the stronger. Now, in this example, he explained it kind of different. Okay, now he's going in the Bible and he's explaining where I know the passage is explaining. I don't know where it is. Of course, I can't from memory say what verse he's going after here. But it's in the New Testament, and people really don't understand this passage. What he's saying here, they always use it, and it means that the poor gave as much as she could, but the rich man didn't. So Christ favored the poor person because she gave everything she could, and she got blessed. But the rich person only gave a little, but he could have gave more because he was rich, so he wasn't blessed. So a lot of people kind of twist this scripture, meaning that it's better to be poor than rich, because that's what people do. But it had nothing to do with that. It had nothing to do with the amount of the gift. And that's what Prentice Mulford is saying here. It has nothing to do with the gift. That's what he said several paragraphs back. It has nothing to do with the gift. Doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if you bought someone a house. Okay, it doesn't matter what it is. But it's your thought. It's your deep thoughts behind the gift. Okay. Now he uses kind of like the reason why he uses a poor person versus rich person is it has nothing to do with the gift. It has nothing to do with the amount of money they're giving. It's the thought behind it. Okay, that's why he blessed the poor woman, because her thought behind it was she had a deepening thought, a deepening heart thought that she really wanted to help. She really wanted to help, and she gave as much as she could. Okay. Versus the rich person. The rich person basically came in, no matter if he gave 10 times what the poor person came, but his thought was he wasn't in it. He was just giving because he was forced to do it. It was demanded or expected of him. See where I'm going with this? Not where I'm going with this, but with Prentice Mulford. Okay, it has nothing to do with a gift. It's your thought behind it. If you're doing it because you're expected to do it because you have money, you're expected to do it because you're rich, or you come to a party and they say, well, Chad has money, so then he's going to bring an awesome gift, and you feel like that expectation, but you really don't want to do it. But I do it anyway. It's the same thing, because my thoughts and heart isn't in the right place. And when I give that gift, I'm not blessing that other person because my thought transmission is forced. It is not my duty, some may ask, to feed, clothe, shelter, and support a very near relative or parent, if helpless or in their old age. And the term doing from a sense of duty does not always imply that the thing done, be it the person helped or the patient nursed through sickness, is done from the impulse of love for that person or love for doing. Now what he's doing is he's kind of twisting it. He's not twisting it, but he's digging deeper here. Okay, when we kind of switch gears, but we're still talking about gift receiving, but now he's taking it a level deeper. Meaning, in the beginning, he's talking about a gift. If I'm giving someone money, food, shelter, no matter what I'm doing for them. Maybe I'm treating out to dinner. No matter what it is, he's using a gift. But now he's using what if I'm taking care of parents in their old age, retirement, so they need help with being taken care of. So how does that play a part? So now he's digging even deeper. The term doing from a sense of duty does not always imply that the thing done, be it the person helped or the patient nursed through sickness, is done from the impulse of love for that person or love for doing. It is sometimes done mechanically or with dislike for doing. It is sometimes a forced or painful performance. For such reason, little good is done. For if physical necessities are temporarily relieved, spiritual necessities are not. And unless the spiritual portion of our natures is fed, there can be no permanent relief or good done the physical. Parents who are in old age are supported by the children merely from a sense of duty, have sometimes their spirits wounded and starved. Listen to this. Parents who are in old age are supported by the children merely from a sense of duty, meaning that the children are taking care of their parents just because they think, I got to do it. It's out of duty. I got to do it. Okay, they expect me to do it. Maybe deep down they don't want to do it, but they're doing it out of just duty. And the same thing happens. And he says, have sometimes their spirits, talking about the parents, are wounded and starved. Wounded because they feel they have endured encumbrances. Starved because no real love goes with the gift or service done by these children. Children who come into the world unwelcomed by their parent and are brought up with only because custom, conventionality, and public opinion demand their support from that parent, are most unfortunate and suffer from the blight and starvation thereby caused by their spirits. Genuine heart love is literally life-giving, and if received by the child, is for it a source of cheer, health, strength, and activity. Listen, I'll read the last sentence here. And it's the same thing. If you're taking care of a parent, you have to be careful. Put your heart in the right place. Okay, the same thing happens. The same thought transmission happens. When you're doing it genuinely and you're taking care of a parent genuinely, the same thing occurs. Genuine heartfelt love is literally life-giving. And if received by the child, is for it a source of cheer, health, strength, and activity. There is a certain trained conscience whose basis of education is fear of public or private opinion. Isn't that so true? It's so true today in 2024. And the same thing Prentice talks about in the mid-1850s here. Okay, people are going to do things they don't want to do just because they fear public or private opinion. They fear what others think about them. There is a certain trained conscience whose basis of education is fear of public or private opinion. This sometimes really impels acts which are said to be done from a sense of duty, a sense of you got to do it, an expectation, okay, because so-and-so might think wrong of me. If public opinion should suddenly change and cast no censor on the person who refused to support very near relatives in want or old age, a proportion of such relatives would probably go to the poorhouse, and the son or daughter who sent them there would be acting out their real natures and not foreigning a sediment they did not possess. Mothers sometimes say, I don't care what becomes of me, so that my children are well brought up and educated. A mother should care a great deal for her own cultivation. Listen to this. This goes deep. I love this. Okay? And you hear so many people say this, a parent, a grandparent. I mean, we've all probably heard stuff like this from, parents or our grandparents. Now, how many people do you know? Maybe you do this, and maybe you say these things. Mothers sometimes say, I don't care what becomes of me, so that my children are well brought up and educated. Meaning that, like your mother in this example, she's sacrificing herself for you to have a great life. And mother should care a great deal for her own cultivation. If her cultivation and growth and wisdom are checked, that of her children would be checked. Listen to this. Okay, this is thought transmission. If your mother's taking care of herself, your children will take care of themselves. That's what he's saying. If her cultivation and growth and wisdom are checked, if she constantly wants to grow and get better, that of her children will be checked. Her children will constantly want to grow or get better. It will be checked if she sinks herself into an endeavor to favor her children. A genuine mother will continually compel the admiring and respect, as well as love of her children. Such admiration and respect can be compelled only by a woman who knows the world, has standing and position in it, and is ever pushing forward to more commanding place and position. Meaning when he says this, and is ever pushing forward and commanding place and position, meaning when you're pushing forward, meaning you're getting better, you're growing, you're bettering yourself. Okay, remember, and this is kind of a great place to bring this up. Remember, energy is not stagnant. Okay, we're either getting better or worse. Energy doesn't stay stagnant. Okay, if energy stood stagnant, okay, people think your life isn't changing. People think energy stays stagnant. Okay, but what's happening is very slowly, you're either slowly getting worse or slowly getting better. Okay, now the prime example is this, is let's say physical fitness. Okay, if even if at one point in your life you were in super shape, okay, maybe it was in high school, college, where you were involved with sports and you were super active, so you're in awesome shape. What happens when you stop working out for 5 years? Okay, does energy stay stagnant? Okay, do you stay exactly the same, your physical appearance, your physical shape? Well, most people are going to say no. If you totally stop working out for 5 years, probably 5 years later, what has happened is you slowly go backwards. It doesn't happen overnight, but you slowly get more and more and more and more and more out of shape. You're slowly getting worse. You're not getting better. So energy doesn't stay stagnant. So is ever pushing forward in more commanding place of position. Such admiration and respect from son or daughter cannot be compelled by the mother who retires to a household corner, becomes a cross between upper nurse and governess, neglects her dress and personal appearance, and teaches her children that she is at their disposal and used in all family emergencies, real or fancied. For this very reason, are many mothers ignored, snubbed, and ridiculed by their grown-up children. I mean, when I read this, when I started getting to this, it kind of made me sad. I don't know why, because I see so many people, even in my family life, you experience this, and when you talk to a lot of people, you experience this. When you talk about older generations, you hear them talk this way, is that my life's over, or they talk in a way they really sacrifice themselves in order for their kids to have a great life. And we're not talking about just sacrificing. We're not talking about money here. We're talking about thought. We're talking about that your parents still want to grow. Okay, because it's that thought transmission. That's why he says a mother should care a great deal for her own cultivation. And her own cultivation and growth and wisdom are checked. That of her children would be checked. Okay, it moves over. Our thoughts, when we're thinking about thought transmission. And green here is super important. That's why I kind of highlight in green. If mothers so sink themselves as they falsely imagine to benefit their children, they pay in cases of terrible penalty. Listen to this. If mothers so sink themselves as they falsely imagine to benefit their children, they pay in cases a terrible penalty. If you allow your will constantly to be overborne by another, if you give up your own preferences and inclinations and become only another's echo, if you live just as others desire, you will lose more and more. For this existence, the power of self-assertion, you will absorb so much of other mind and thought about you as to become a part of that mind, and so act in accordance even with its silent will and unspoken desire. You will fossilize and sink into a hopeless servitude. You will lose more and more of both physical and mental power for doing anything. You will become the chimney corner encumbrance. Meaning a chimney corner, like you're a decoration. You just become a decoration in your own household. The senile parent, the helpless old man or woman, endured rather than loved. This, in many instances, has been the effort of the grown-up children's minds upon a parent. Listen, isn't this so amazing? Okay, now we're doing this unconsciously. Okay, we're not doing this consciously. We're unaware we're doing this. Is that and he's given an example here. This, in many instances, has been the effect. The parents are acting like this because these are actually thought transmissions from their children. Their children's really thinking about this. That as you grow old, just retire, just go over, hang out with retired people. Like maybe I'm not explaining it very good, but it's thoughts transmission. That's what we have to understand here. The thoughts that we have is bouncing to that other person we're actually thinking about. If we're thinking of them negative or in any negative way, that's what's happening in their life, and it's happening slowly. But if we're thinking abundance for them, we're thinking positive for them, they're receiving the same thing. Same way in the Neville Goddard teaching I talked about 10 or 15 minutes ago. There's thought transmission. Okay, the powers that we have for ourselves, all the abundance within us, the powers that we have, the powers of manifesting we use the same powers for other people. And it's all by thoughts transmission. It's all by how we're thinking about them. This, in many cases, has been the effort of grown-up children's minds upon a parent. It is the silent force of these minds, meaning it's the secret thoughts, continually working on that of a parent, which helps to break the parent down physically, and the decay and mental weakness commonly charged to advancing years is due in part to the injurious effect of a mind or group of minds seeking to usurp and overpower another. This evil is done unconsciously. This is what I just said. Okay, we're doing this unconsciously. We're not consciously doing it. We're not purposely doing it. Okay, we're just letting our thoughts go wild. We're not in control of our thoughts. We're not in control of our mind. We have this great power. That's what I said in the beginning, in the introduction. We have this great power. We have this great power of abundance, but we're not controlling the power. Okay, we're abusing the power that we have. This evil is done unconsciously. The son wishes to manage the farm. He will may be strong. He gains power step by step. He takes as rights what at first he took only by a father's permission or privileges. He goes on step by step, having his way in all things, great and small, perhaps being aided by others of the children, using their silent force in the same direction. And this may be a combined force almost impossible for one person to withstand if continually exposed to it. It is steady, incessant pressure, all in one direction. It works day and night. It works all the more effortlessly because the parent so exposed to it is utterly ignorant of such force and its operation upon him. He finds himself growing weak. He becomes inert. He lacks his old vigor and thinks it is through the approach of old age. See, we think everything, and we hear this in commercials, media in 2024. We think when we get older and older, we think our health is going to decline. So when we have those thoughts, what happens is it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. Our health declines. Okay, because it's all on thoughts from transmission. It's on what we're thinking, but also it's upon what others people are thinking about us. And these are examples he's using. He's basically using parents and children. I knew a man over 70 years of age, and as a sound, active, and vigorous in mind and body, as one of 40. Listen to this. He's given an example here in this whole paragraph right here. There's an example. He said he knew a man over 70 years of age, and as sound, active, and vigorous in mind and body, as one of 40. So he has a friend that's 70 years old that pretty much acts like he's 40 years old. He had organized and built up a large business. His several children at last looked into their heads that it was time. Father retired from business. Henceforth, the thought spoken and unspoken, bearing month and month, and out on father from the children, was this desire and demand that he should retire from business. Confiding his situation to a friend, he said, "Why should I retire from business? I live in it, I like it, and so far I can see I am able to conduct it properly." But the persistence, demand, and force brought to bear on him from these foes of his own blood and household were too great to withstand. And this is so important here. Listen to this. But the persistent demand and force brought to bear on him from those foes of his own blood, his own children, and household were too great to withstand. He did retire. The sons and daughters were satisfied. The father soon commenced to decline in health. He lived about 2 years afterwards, and one of his last remarks was, "My children have killed me." I mean, this is a very sad example, but look, in the very beginning, here's a man, he's 70 years old. He's doing what he loves. He owns a business. He lives for that business, doing what he loves. He has the mind, the activity, the sound mind, the vigorousness, being active, just like a man in his 40s, but he's 70. But his children are constantly murmuring to him, "When are you going to retire? When are you going to give the business to us?" And then the children, internally, unconsciously, are constantly thinking these thoughts. And maybe this went on for a long time, or went on for years. Then he even says, "Why should I retire from business? I live in it. I like it. I love it. And as far as I can see, I'm able to conduct it properly." He loved what he was doing. Even though he's 70 years old, he was active just like a 40-year-old. But their thoughts, through thoughts transmission, and through their persistence of constantly thinking that way, Listen what happened. But the persistent demand of force brought to bear on him from these foes of his own blood and household were too great to withstand, because it's thought transmission. And it says he did retire. And once he retired, remember, once he retired, he was in perfect health. Then 2 years later, he died. Ought I not love my children above all others? Asked one. The term ought has no application to nature of love. Love goes where it will, and to whom it will, and where it is attracted. You cannot force yourself to love anybody, anything, or anybody. There have been parents who have had no real love for their children, and children who had no real love for their parents. Neither party can be blamed for this. They were lacking in the capacity for loving. They were born so lacking. There were no more to be censored for such deficiency than you would censor a person for being born blind or crippled. Some parents fancy their love for children, yet do not. A father who loses his temper and beats his son does not really love that son. It would be better to say that he loved to beat him or tyrannize him over him or tyrannize over him. Government in the family is a necessity. Bird no sound. Loving government is administered on the basis of anger and irritability. Parents sometimes interfere and seriously affect the future of a child by opposing its desires in a choice of a profession. The parent may be prejudiced against certain walks in life. The children may wish to follow one of these walks. It meets a bitter and uncompromising opposition on the parent's part. There is no reasoning, discussion, or counseling in the matter, nothing but a stern positive no. Such sentiment and act are not impelled by love for the child or on the parent's part. They are impelled by the parent's love for his or her own opinion, a love of tyranny. Parents sometimes forget that after the child emerges from the utter physical and mental helplessness of infancy, it is becoming more and more an individual. Isn't that so true today? Now he's saying infancy, back in the 1850s is going to be way different than it is in 2024. So, but what he's really saying here is when you start off as a kid, when you go through your early years, or your teenage years, your adolescence, now you just graduate high school, you're 18, 19 years old. That's kind of the proper lingo today. So this is where it's kind of going on with this paragraph. So think in those terms. Parents sometimes forget that their child emerges from their utter physical and mental helplessness of infancy. It is becoming more and more an individual. As an individual, it may be show decided tastes, preferences, and inclinations in some direction. No parent and no person can break or alter these tastes or preferences. No one can make that child's mind over into something else. For the child's mind, as we call it, is really a mind or spirit, which has lived other physical lives from infancy to maturity, if not to old age, and as it comes into possession of its new body and acquires a relative control over that body, it will begin to act out the man or woman as it was in its former life. And that may be a man or a woman very closely related to the parent or hardly related at all. But in any event, the parent is dealing with an individual who is growing more and more into tastes, preferences, and traits of character, which belong to and are part of it. These must have expression. They will have expression in mind or spirit, whether allowed to physically or not. If the boy is ever longing to go to sea and the parent forbids, the boy is on the sea in the mind, and if so in mind, it is far better that his body shall follow. I love this at the end here. Listen to this. Now, I want you to really think about Neville Goddard. A lot of you follow Neville Goddard. A lot of you follow that imagination creates reality. What you see in your imagination will become in your 3D world. I mean, that's how strong our imagination is. So he's really talking about imagination here, but he's just not using the term imagination. But our imagination does create reality. What we think, what we imagine, sooner or later will come in our 3D world. Listen, they will have an expression in mind or spirit, whether allowed to physically or not. If the boy is ever longing to go to sea and the parents forbids, the boy is on the sea in his mind, meaning he's going inside his imagination. He's seeing him at sea. He's seeing maybe at this time he wants to be a fisherman or a sailor, something like that. He wants to work by the sea, live by the sea. So in his mind, he's going inside his imagination, and he's living the life he wants to live. He's doing what he wants to do inside his imagination. And this is what Prentice Mulford says. And if so in mind, it is far better that his body should follow, for there is only damage when mind and body are not working in correspondence together. If the mother refused to allow the boy to go to sea because she fears it's dangerous for him, still she is loving her own fears in her own way, too, more than she does her son. So it's really like when he's explaining it in a different way, of course, and there's always going to be devil's advocate playing here when I say this, but when she says the mother saying this is she's still loving her own fears in her own way too, more than she loves her son, meaning that when parents say no, especially if you're of age or old enough to do it, it's your parents' fears of what's going to happen to you. It's not your own fears, it's your parents' fears. The parent sometimes usurps a complete tyranny, not only over the child's body but over its mind. Remember, everything connects. Okay, he's not saying it in that way, but he's connecting the body and the mind, and he's connecting the other person. And in these examples, he's usually using parents and very close relatives. Okay, but it could be other people, other friends. But he's in this whole chapter here, he's using parents and close relatives when he says this. Is that parents sometimes usurps a complete tyranny, not only over the child's body but over its mind. So your thoughts your parents have of you and over you is influencing you as well, not just your body. The child's taste, inclination, tendencies, and preferences are held as of no importance whatever. If the boy wants to be a sailor and the parent wants him something else, that something else the parent may insist that he shall be. But does he succeed? See, that's the question. If the boy really wants to be a sailor and the parent wants him to be something else because the parents might think, well, that's dangerous, something might happen to him. So, I mean, that's kind of, that's just, sometimes what maybe a loving parent might do, or they think it's love because they think, well, you really want to be a sailor, but it's really back then, it's really dangerous. It's a really dangerous job, you working at the sea and being a sailor. So, of course, the parents want him to be something else. And it continues, and something else that parent may insist that shall be, but does he succeed? Is the son going to be really happy? Is he really going to succeed in life of what the parents want him to be? Let the host of mediocrity and all callings in the land answer. And mediocrity means the mechanical following of any pursuit in which there is no live interest. Listen to that. Your life is going to be mediocre. If you're not following your passions, your life is going to be mediocre. In this instance, you're doing what your parents want to do. Okay, your parents kind of have that thought, that body control, thought control over you. You're doing what your parents want you to do, but your life's going to be mediocre. Meaning that mediocre means that you're not going to really have true pleasure and love and joy out of life because you're really doing what you don't want to do. More than this, where a body is compelled to do one thing or live in a certain way, the mind longs to live in another way. There is a force set in motion which in many cases tears mind and body apart. And parents sometimes grieve over the loss of a child when they are responsible for the death of its body from this cause. How long then should parental control continue over the child, or rather over a spirit for which you have been an agency for furnishing with a new body? It is unreasonable to say that such control should not continue after such body, emerging from the helplessness of infancy, shall have acquired such control of its organization as shall enable it to meet all physical demands and necessities. To go beyond this, to give food, clothes, shelter, maintenance to a person, is doing him or her a great injustice, and even cruelty. In so doing, you do not grant exercise to those faculties which must be used in coping successfully in the world. You make the children the less fitted to be self-sustaining and earn their own living. You teach them to lie in a soft, luxurious bed when they should be out in the world exercising and making more strong and dexterous their powers both of mind and body. And I love how he was kind of saying this. He kind of says it kind of weird, but I think you kind of get what he's saying. Is lots of times, we have, or even maybe we were brought up by overbearing parents, and that they want us to do what they want us to do. That overbearing can go as a child into our teenage years, adolescence. It can follow into our 20s and even 30s. I mean, a lot of people struggle with this, and then he twists it into, at what age should you start giving your children more independence, so they start making decisions for themselves, because that's really what's happening in the real world. And that's sometimes how, when I was raised, I was raised where decisions were always made for me. So all that did was and the decisions were made for me through my elementary years, adolescent years, teenage years, and even in my early 20s when I went to college. All the decisions were made for me, but all that did was make me super, super, super indecisive as an adult. So, when decisions are always made for you, your parents are not doing it consciously ill, they're doing it more unconsciously. Okay, they're trying to help you, but in the same time, they're kind of hurting you as well, because then I have friends that when they were brought up at a certain age, the decision was made for the decision. The parents would ask them, well, what would you do if their kid came to them for advice or had a question? Well, what would you do? They would kind of flip the question and have their child actually answer and kind of do what they want to do. Okay, they kind of tend to be a little bit more successful in life. Now, it doesn't mean you can't, like myself, that you can't, we change from within out. We change our deep-rooted beliefs. But I always struggle with being indecisive. It's always something I have to work on. It's always something that I have to make decisions, quick decisions. Parents sometimes make themselves unjustly responsible and inflict needless mental suffering on themselves for the errors and tendencies of the children. A son or daughter takes a worse course, or rather, let us put it, a course where the evil is more prominent or more opposed to conventional ideas of propriety than other habits more tolerated and deemed reputable, but which may be more subtle and for the most part unknown. Sources of a great ills as those condemned by society. A son takes a drink or reckless associates and commits some crime. The parent condemns herself for not having looked more carefully after her boy. She may accuse herself of having been, through her neglect, the prime agency for her son's misdeeds. Madame, you blame yourself far too much. You did not make that son or daughter's character. It was made long before that spirit had the use of its last new body. What traits and what imperfections were very prominent in its last existence will appear in its next. If that was a thieving spirit before, it will probably show thieving tendencies now. If it was gross, animal, and gluttonous, then similar tendencies will show themselves now. You, if grown to a mere refined plane of thought, may do much to modify and lessen these tendencies. But all you do in this respect will be done through the silent force and action of your superior thought on your child's mind. It will not be done through a great deal of verbal counsel or physical punishment or discipline. Listen to this. This is so powerful. This is how powerful our thought is. And listen to this one more time. I read it one more time. But all that you will do in this respect will be done through the silent force and action of your superior thought, meaning thought transmission on your child's mind. It will not be done through a great deal of verbal counsel. You're arguing with them, you're yelling at them, some type of physical punishment or discipline. Whatever a mind is on entering on a new physical experience, whatever imperfection belongs to it must appear and be acted out and becketed pain and punishment of some kind, until the spirit sees clearly for itself how, through its errors, it brings these punishments on itself. These lessons can only be learned when that person has full freedom, so far as parental control goes, to live as it pleases. You may for a time control such a life and make it externally live as you please, but such external life is only a veneer. If the mind be full of lower tastes and inclinations, the sooner these are lived out, the sooner you will be the person that learned the real law, which inflicts pains and penalties for breaking its unchangeable rules. And the sooner it will know the happiness which comes of living in accordance with these rules. That every spirit must do for him or herself. And that's what I said with this chapter. He goes deep and deep and deep with this. And this is so true. Like when he says, I'm going to highlight here on purple, is the sooner these are lived out. Meaning it's almost like I can remember being brought up. I was I was an athlete, trained professionally in martial arts, from my mid-teens to early 20s. So even in my mid-teens, we didn't really have a stereotypical, teenage years. Or my parents kind of did a lot of sheltering. They didn't want us to go out, hang out with friends. But they thought we would make bad choices. They didn't want us to go out and drink, but they thought we would make bad choices. So we were kind of very, very secluded, very, very controlled over that. So even my sister and I talk about this sometimes, where we didn't really have teenage years at all. We didn't really live as a teenager. And it's so funny how Prentice Mulford brings this up. Even as a kid, when you control your child so much that they're not living out that wild side, and I would use that wild side, or going out, hanging out with friends, being wild a little bit, going out to parties or going out drinking. Sooner or later you're going to do those things, and maybe you resonate with that if you've lasted this long in this video. Is that sooner or later those things are going to happen. So that's why he's saying this. The sooner these are lived out, the sooner will that person learn the real law, which inflicts pain and penalties for breaking its unchangeable rules. The sooner it will know the happiness which comes from living in accordance with its rules. The sooner or later it's kind of out of your system, you can kind of move on from it. But lots of times, parents will kind of be in so much control over their kids, control over their teenagers, even if they're 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, or even in their early 20s. If you're living in their household, sometimes if you have controlling parents, they're still controlling over you. So you're not really living a life how you really live. You're not getting certain things out of your system as you would have gotten out of your system when you're 15 years old. Okay, now you're in your 30s and you're kind of acting like a 15-year-old in certain ways. Okay, because you never got it out of your system. A parent may mold a false character for a child. It may teach indirectly through the effect of its own mental condition operating on the child how to feign what the world calls goodness, how it may seem good as regards outward conduct, to be what it is not at all in secret tendency and inclination, how, in brief, to be a hypocrite. No person is really informed by another in the sense such a term of sometimes used. Reform must come from within. It must be self-sustaining. It must not depend wholly on another's presence or influence. If it does, it is only temporary reform. It will fail when the influence of the person on whom it depends is removed. We hear sometimes the assertion, such or such a person's wife has been making of him, meaning the husband. By the way, why do we never hear of a man's being making of his wife? And this is kind of so funny because we still hear this today, but he's saying it in a weird way when he says, we hear sometimes the assertion, such and such person's wife has been making the husband. Meaning we hear guys say this all the time. My wife's my best friend. If it wasn't for my wife, my life would be in shambles. My wife really made me. We always hear that, but he basically reverses it and he said, well, by the way, this is in the mid-1850s and this is 2024. And it's still the same thing. And he says, by the way, why do we never hear that of the man's being the making of his wife? That the man's character and that way is good for his wife. It's not always a wife making the husband. The wife making the husband a better life. A man may be prevented from his intemperance, or he may continually be embraced up to meet the world through his wife's influence and mental power. But if in such reform he relies entirely upon her, if he cannot sustain himself without her continual presence and prompting, his is no lasting reformation, and is also very heavy and damaging load for her to carry. If it is one-sided piece of business, when one person must supply all the sustaining force for two, and this is persisted in, the wife, or whosoever so supplies it, will at last sink under such burden, and there will be two wrecked lives instead of one. No person can make another. Listen to this. And this goes on to relationships too. No person can make another in the highest sense. But one person having the superior mind can, if in a very close and long continued association with one weaker, give temporarily to the weaker their very life and force. If their desire is very strong to help the weaker, it is, if it be the husband who receives of the wife and is so dependent on the wife, then he does not represent any character of his own. He represents and is clothed temporarily with his wife's character, or as much as if it can be appropriate. If she dies or is removed from him, or if they break up, get divorced, then he lapses and sinks into his real self, unless it is resolved to be self-sustaining and evolve force out of himself instead of using another's. If she continues to supply him, she is only sustaining his temporary character, which cannot last when its source of supply is removed. And in such continuance, she will certainly in time exhaust herself. Now, in this whole paragraph right here, I won't go so much onto it in length. It really reminds me of an empath. Okay, I do a lot of videos on empaths. It really reminds me of an empath. But usually this is what an empath will do, is maybe no matter if it's the husband or the wife, if one kind of, he's using the husband in this, where the husband is so kind of living extreme with his wife's existence. His wife is his whole world. He's doing everything his wife wants, the hobbies, the friends, and everything else. He gives up everything he really wants to do and kind of comes over here. And it also can be the wife that does the same thing over here. And it's not just the guy. Okay, but it's really an empath where you really give up. And this kind of leads to kind of a very destroys your life. And in this example, he's saying it's both. Okay, it's the husband and the wife. If the wife is the one that carries this burden, it's exhausting for herself. And mentally, she's going to be physically and mentally exhausted. Then as the husband kind of clings to her in this example, eventually, if they break up, get divorced, or whatever happens, his life is going to be in shambles. Parents often unconsciously teach their children to lie down upon them, to depend upon them too long for their moral support. The result of this error is that then the parent's life is dragged out. Through carrying so heavy a load, the child ceases to have any genuine love for a parent. You may pity what is decrepit, weak, and shattered. Love you cannot. Love is based on admiration, and admiration is not compelled by decay. The tendency called instinct, which impels the mother bird to turn its young out of the nest so soon as they have sufficient strength to fly. The animal in the weaning its young to turn them adrift and leave them to shift for themselves is founded on the natural and defined laws. We may seem it is a custom of the brutes and is therefore brutal, but would it be a kindness for a bird to encourage the young to stay in the nest where it could not gain strength, and when a few weeks will bring the storms, the severity of winter, which the parent bird itself cannot withstand? Again, the parent, be it bird, animal, or human mother, needs, after these periods of bringing their young into the world and rearing them, a season of entire rest and recuperation, and the duration of such resting season should be proportionate to the complexity of the organization and the force expended by such organization. During such periods, the parent should be freed from any and all demands from the child. Birds and animals in their natural and wild life take such periods of rest, but thousands of human mothers are never free from the demands of their children. Until worn out, they drop into their graves. They should be as free, so far as their children are concerned, as they were in girlhood and before they became mothers. Motherhood is a most necessary and an indispensable phase of existence for ripening and developing qualities. But no one experience should be followed and dwelt in forever. Life in its more perfected state will be full of alterations, not a rut in which if you are once set, you must continually travel. If human children remain with a mother years after attaining what may be termed a responsible age, if they always look to her for aid, advice, sympathy, and existence, if the mother allows herself to become the family leaning post, she may also be repeating the one sided business of supplying too much force to others and getting none back. She may be practicing a false and injurious species of motherhood because it is exacted, begged, and dragged from her. She may be robbing herself of a new life, which awaits her. When the brood is reared and their wings are self sustaining, she is helping the children to make her a feeble, witless old woman. Perhaps one remarks, if one suggestion was literally followed, the streets would be full of children turned by parents out of their homes and unable to provide for themselves. So they would. I argue here no literal following of an example set by bird and beast. It would be a great injustice. No custom when followed for ages, even if based in error, can suddenly change without disturbance, injustice, and wrong. Yet it is worth our whole to study this principle that we find in nature, from the tree that casts adrift the ripe acorn to the bird or animal that casts adrift the relatively ripened young. Neither acorn, bird, nor animal which cast off or weaned ever returns to the parent for self-sustaining power. Such power in these cases is only given by the parent until the new organization is strong enough to absorb and appropriate of the elements about it, absorb of earth and sunshine or flesh or grain, the nourishment necessary to its support. Are not our streets today full of grown-up children quite unable to provide for themselves? This is in the 1850s, and this is kind of also true today in 2024. Okay, are not our streets today full of grown-up children quite unable to provide for themselves? Do not thousands leave parental homes with no self-sustaining power, who are all through life unable to feed, clothe, and shelter themselves, saved by long hours of drudging labor at the lowest wages? Does not this life of drudgery exhaust and cut off prematurely? Are not thousands of daughters all over the land who will become old maids, and whose parents will not permit them? Will they so dispose to go out in the world and take their chances? These are the birds cuddled in a nest until their wings, denied exercise, lose all at last all power or prompting for flight, and those mouths, though they become grown-up birds, are trained only to open and receive the morsels dropped in them. And that wraps up chapter 2 here. In chapter 2, this was a hefty chapter. That's why I warned you in the beginning that Prentice Mulford, he goes really deep with this chapter. He almost goes so deep at the end, you kind of makes you walk away kind of thinking, what is he really talking about here? And can he wrap this up? He didn't explain it this way, but I feel that this is what he's really meaning, is that when we start looking at the laws of the universe, is that if you really believe that abundance is your birthright, abundance is within you, expansion is within you. Even if you study with Thomas Troward and read his stuff, is the body, the spirit wants to expand. It wants to get better. It wants to move forward. That's why I said energy is never stagnant. Either we're getting better or worse. And I think that the examples he gave really detailed examples into family, into relationships and stuff like that. And he wasn't explaining it like this, but it's about expansion. It's about, if abundance is inside you, you want to get better and grow. If you're not growing, what's opposite of growing? If you're not growing, well, you're dying. If you're not expanding, well, you're getting worse. So we work on these spectrums of the laws of the universe, and this is why he gave examples of of parents or a mother of giving up what she wants to do in her life for her children. Even when her children are adults, she lives for her children. So that's why that he's explaining it differently, but I think that this is what he's getting is that you still need to want to expand, you still need to want to grow and do better with your life. And even if you're older, it doesn't matter how old you are. If you want to go to college, learn a new skill, do what you want to do, you should always expand. So if you don't expand, the reverse happens. Then he talks about thought transmission also. He throws in thought transmission, how we're thinking. it either can bless or hurt the other person. Then he kind of flips it, and he talks about how, sometimes we have overbearing parents that don't kind of give their children free will at a certain age, no matter if it's, in their early adolescence, later adolescence, if it's teenage years, older teenagers. It's the same thing. Is like they kind of cripple their children, meaning that their children kind of adapts that same old adage, that same old thought, is they don't want to expand. Now remember, if you either expand, what's the opposite of expansion? Well, you either grow or you die. You're either getting better or you're not. It's either positive or negative. These are laws of the universe. You're really keeping your kid exactly where you're not doing it consciously, you're doing this unconsciously, but you're keeping them right where they are. They're afraid to expand because they haven't learned that skill of growth and be in that growth. And I think he's really setting up this chapter to kind of move on to other chapters. Even though this chapter is kind of difficult, it was kind of really difficult to kind of understand where he's going with this, even though it's very interesting. But I think he's going in that realm. He just isn't explaining it like this. Is that when you know the laws of the universe, you know laws of attraction and manifesting, and you know the laws of abundance. Abundance is your birthright. That means we all should be growing and expanding. Our life should be getting better and better and better. That's expansion. All right, same way if you study with Thomas Trover. I love what Thomas Trover said is, my mind is a center of divine operation. And divine operation means expansion into more. So your mind is always wanting to expand. Your mind always wants more. It always wants better. It always wants more beautiful things. Okay, that's life, is growing to more. Not life isn't stagnant. We think it's stagnant. We think we stay right where we are, but we don't. We're either slowly getting better and slowly getting worse. And I think this is what Prentice Mulford was going on with this chapter, and I think that's what he was trying to convey with this chapter. And but he wasn't just saying it in those terms. Maybe we know today in 2024. But this is what he's meaning. He just dug really, 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 really deep into this. But other than that, my friends, hopefully you got something out of this chapter. Comment below. I'd love to know kind of your thoughts, where you're at, kind of your beliefs here. And remember, I love you guys, and I'll see you in chapter 3.